Welcome back. I'm going to do another tutorial on Heidi. We talked about it a bit on Thursday night, and I posted some videos on there, but I want to get a little bit more specific in here. I've opened up the Heidi, and I'm going to create a brand new database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this for right now, and I have it on the bottom of my desktop. So I'm going to open it up. So you're going to get this. This unnamed over here is a session. You don't really need to be concerned with the name of that. You can leave it at unnamed. You can create a new one. But for right now, whatever comes up with yours when you install it, just leave it. Put in your password. Remember, the port needs to be 3306 in there, and click on open. So I have all these things in here. You don't really need to be concerned about all the stuff that I have over here. When you get in here, you're going to probably have just a few things. You're going to have the MySQL, and you're going to have the performance schema. So don't worry about anything else that I have. First thing we're going to do is just going to right-click and just find something that says Create New. And the first thing we need to do is create a database. Remember, a database is nothing more than a collection of tables. So we're going to click on Create a New Database. And I'm just going to call it IT 43802. I don't think I have that, so we'll just leave that there. Don't worry about the collision and any of that stuff. Just leave it over here. So you can see right over here, you're getting the actual database names. I called it 03. So this is the code that's going to do that. And yes, I know I said 02, but I typed 03, so we'll leave it at 03. So now we have a list of all our databases in here. So we're going to be working on this. Click on the arrow here, and you see absolutely nothing. And the reason why there's nothing is because we've done nothing. So remember, right-click is your friend. So you're going to click on right-click. And again, we want Create New. And this time, we want a table. Do not worry about views, stored routines, triggers, or event. That's for advanced. We're not going to be able to get into that. So for right now, we just want a table. And we are here. We need to call our table whatever we want to call it. So I'm just going to call it students. So we're going to do something with a student file. And you do not need to worry about anything other than one file, one table. And I'm going to keep it that way so that when you create yours, you'll make it as easy as possible. Now, at this point in time, we can't save it because we don't have any columns. So we just need to click on Add. And again, here is our column ID. I always recommend typing in the first few letters of the table name in every column, and then we'll just make it ID. For the student ID, it's going to be an integer because it's going to be the primary index. If you've had the database class, you should be very familiar with an index. A primary index is a way to look up records. So it cannot be duplicate. It can be something other than an integer, but for our case, we're going to be an integer. We're not going to allow null. That means it has to be some kind of entry in there. Unsigned means whether or not it's unsigned integer or a signed integer. If you've taken the programming class, you know that unsigned integer can only be positive numbers. Well, obviously, we don't really care one way or the other, so we're just going to leave it for here right now, the default, not worry about it. And you can put in a comment. Don't worry about coalition expressions or anything like that. That could be a calculated. So we're going to click on the default, and we want this to be auto increment. And the reason we want it to be auto increment is as we add new records, we do not want to put in the student ID. We want to physically let the system do it for us. We could do it if we wanted to, but for our purposes, we're going to choose auto increment. And we're done. Now, if I click on save, I will get an error saying that you don't have an index. So we need to make sure that we have an index. The easiest way to do it, you can click on index here and add, as I showed you the other night, but I'm going to show you an actual easier way. Remember, right-click is your friend. So if you right click on here, you have the new index right over here. We want a primary index. Primary index must be unique. And boom, and it's done. Now notice that it already created the primary key name and it already named it with the column. So we're good over here and we have auto increment. So now we have different ways that we can add a record into it. So I'm going to, at this point in time, save and just make sure we don't have any errors. Click on save, and we did not get any errors. So that's fine. So now what we want to do is add some records. Well, we can't. We're actually in indexes over here. So we're going to click on data. And if there's data in there, then boom. Now, the reason why nothing's showing is because we don't have a table showed. So let's go in here, and let's click on tables, and let's click on data again. Now we have something different. Now we have the student ID as the index, so on and so forth, but we don't have any other columns except for student index. So what we need to do is we need to go back in to the table, and we need to add some more columns. So again, click on add, and let's do last name. So we'll do stud and last name. Now this time we want what's called a varchar. That's basically, just think of it as a string. And as soon as I find it, we'll do it. It has to be in here somewhere, and there it is, varchar. And we'll leave it at 50. We're not going to allow null, but the default can be 0. If we click on the default, you can see, for right now, I would just choose no default value. Then we want to add a new column, and we're going to choose stud first name, and everything else can be the same. And let's add one more column, and we'll just make it GPA. And once we do that, now take a look at the names of these columns in here. It's very important that when you do your select or you do your insert or you do your update from the SQL, which is structured query language, they must be identical to these over here. You cannot make them, if the little L is typed in, it's looking for a big L, it will not work. So I'm only doing it this way to make it a little bit easier to read. So once we have that, the student GPA is not going to be a varchar. It's going to be a float. A float is a decimal that has points. Obviously, an integer is no decimal points. So this is a number that has decimal points. They call it a floating point in here. Don't worry about that. And we don't really need any kind of default. So at this point in time, let's click on save, and we're done. So at this point, you really need to be done with your table. So you're going to create a table, and you're going to put in all the fields that you're going to put in for what you're going to be adding and updating in here. Basically, this is exactly how you do it. So you're going to use integer, varchar, and then we could put date enrolled, say. So let's just put stud, date enrolled. Now here, we're going to want a date variable. So we find date wherever it happens to be hiding, and we could use date and time or just plain date. We really don't care what time of it, so we'll just put in date. You could put in the year as well in there, so that takes care of everything. And we can put, for the default date, if we wanted to, we can put the current timestamp in here. So let's just do a custom, and then you can do whatever you want in here. But for now, we're going to leave it. We don't want this here. We don't want a null. Let it be put in automatically. So we will just leave this for right now in here, so it needs to get put in. So let's leave the default value. You can make it where it automatically fits the date or inserts the date when you add a new record. However, we don't really need to do that because you might be putting in a student that enrolled 3 days ago, 4 days ago. So let's just leave it at that. And we're taking care of that, and we could put in an advisor if we wanted to. So at this point in time, again, I suggest you save early and often. Anytime that there's an issue, boom. And here's the definition of varchar. Tells you what you can do. And definition of float and so on and so forth. Any of these other things you can look up for yourself. So now we're done. What we want to do now is we want to add some data to the records. You're not going to be adding data to the records, but I'm going to add 1 or 2 records just to show you what happens during the process and how to do it if you needed to do it manually. So we're going to click on data, and notice here is all of our columns, which is our fields. There's nothing in there. The easiest way to do it is to click on the plus sign up here. Or you could right-click here and choose Insert Row. I like the plus sign. I showed you a different way with the arrow key, the down arrow key. However, I prefer this way. It's just the easiest way. So I'm going to click on here. Now, you do not need to worry about the student ID. So let's just go right to the last name and double-click on it. And I'll just be nice. And notice it actually put in the date automatically for us, which you can change. Isn't that nice? So when you're done, hit OK, and then you can add another record. And look what happens when you add another record. It automatically puts the student ID in as 1. So let's go back in here. We'll add my wife as well. And she only got a 9.3 when she graduated. She doesn't have the brains in the family. So that takes care of that. And we're done. Boom. So now, notice it still says no, but I'm not adding any more records to change it. Well, I can fix that just strictly by hitting the up arrow key. And boom, it added there. Now, if I needed to add something that's more space than what's allowed, say my wife had a really long first name, I could double click in here and I could choose this over here, and then I could expand it and I could type as far as I want. Or I could make this and drag this over here and make that bigger. So there's all different kinds of objects. Now notice there's no saved in here, so we don't really need to. Now let's take a look down here at what happened in the insert. So let's take a look, and this is what you're going to physically do. So we inserted a record. So let's find an insert into. So insert into is listing the student. That's the database. Then we want student last name, student GPA in here. So those are the fields that we're going to put in it, values, and it just put in the names over here. That's all there is to it. If you're going to make a manual SQL code, when you get your form's going to process on a separate PHP page, and the PHP page is going to make a database connection. It's going to choose insert into the name of the database, whatever the name of the file is, the table that you're using, the fields that you're going to use, and then the values. Now notice it doesn't give you the ID because you don't need to insert the ID. You can do that automatically in here, and I'll show you how to do that later. Or you can make it where you insert the inside ID yourself in here. So instead of making auto increment, you can do that. So again, the choice is yours how you want to do it. And we'll just leave it as that. When you're done, that's it. One thing you should always remember to do is when you finish doing what you're going to do, click on File and Exit. Just don't click over here because you want the session manager to close everything. So I'm going to click on exit. We still get an error. That's probably on my machine. So you don't need to worry about that. Let's see if there's anything in here that's relevant in here, but we did it right. And everything looks good. So there's access violation, who really knows why, and I really don't care. So that takes care of that. So just to be on a safe side, I'm going to open it back up. And let's see if it closes manually this time properly. So you can see that we still have our students here. Everything's fine. And let's click on File and Exit. And we didn't get it this time. So that's it for this video. Hope this helps and look forward to seeing you. I will be sending out an email about a special session for all those that are interested. So be looking forward to seeing you the next time we have one. Have a wonderful day.